So if I tell you the setup for this movie, it sounds like a very bog standard horror movie. A family move into a new house and they discover some sort of weird presence living in there. But the way that this movie has been shot and put together makes it no standard horror movie. This was directed by Steven Soderbergh. He's probably most famous for doing the Ocean's trilogy, for Traffic, and for Sex, Lives and Videotapes. He's actually one of 2 directors ever to have gotten nominated twice in the same year for the Best Director category at the Oscars. So you'd think he'd want to continue doing big, high-profile work, but no, he's really content to do small, little, independent films like this one. Because this is one tiny little film. It was shot all in one location. It had a budget of only $2 million. Yes, it had Lucy Liu as a star, but the rest of it were a cast of unknowns. And I kind of love Soderbergh for it, because when you look at other big directors like Chris Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, they're all working on a scale that feels so unreachable. They make movies that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. They've got great big sets, they've got whole teams of people working on every aspect of it. But Soderbergh with this film is doing something that I feel like a film student would have been capable of if they just had the right idea. I say all that up front because I went into The Presence knowing absolutely nothing about it, and I think that is the best way to experience it. So if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it first. But if you need more of a hook, the real premise is that actually the entire movie is shot from the perspective of the ghost. We only see what the ghost sees, and that takes what would have been a fairly standard premise and really flips it on its head. Because we've all seen ghost stories before, we know what the tropes are and how these go, but you've never seen it done quite like this. And what makes it really work and so interesting is because they put so much thought into making the ghost a character and showing that character through how the camera moves. Because we never get any reverse shot, we never see what the ghost looks like, we never hear them talk, so the only indication we get of what they're thinking and feeling is through how the camera moves. And you see that through the choices the ghost makes in terms of just who to follow or what to look at. You know, there'll be characters and they'll be talking in a scene and then they'll split off and one character will go one way and one character will go another way. And so the fact that the ghost is deciding to stay in that specific room or follow that specific person is giving us a little bit of insight into what they're thinking and what they're interested in. That's really interesting because it never feels like you're in a situation where you're watching something because that's what the director wanted you to look at. It feels like you're really getting a perspective of a character. The movie implies that the ghost can't stop looking, it can't lose conscious or close its eyes because it doesn't have any. But there are things that are happening that the presence clearly does not want to look at, so it'll just look away because that's the only thing it can do. And it's the little details like that that give you so much to wonder about when you're watching it. And again, because it's shot from essentially the perspective of a character, there's just a voyeurism to it. There's this feeling that we're not supposed to be watching this, or that the characters wouldn't be saying what they're saying or acting the way they're acting if they knew that there was someone watching them. Now, the side effect of showing everything from the ghost's POV is that every scene is done in one continuous take. Everyone has to be on their A game to position themselves in the right spot, especially Soderbergh himself, because he's the one operating the camera. He could be doing it for 7 to 10 minutes at a time, and if he messes up, that's an entire take ruined. But it has risks even after the production is finished, because whenever you get into the edit, you can start the scene later, you can end it earlier, but everything in between, they're locked into that. They can't cut. The scene length is the scene length. You know, you can't take out little bits of dialogue to try and make everything move faster. You're locked into that time. But even with that hurdle, I felt the film was paced really well, and it's one of those things that, even though I admire the film for the fact that on a technical level it could have been made by almost anyone, but the fact that the film is able to overcome those challenges and make it seem so effortless is a sign of a master filmmaker. And a script by a master screenwriter. This was written by David Koepp, who wrote Mission Impossible, Jurassic Park, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and I think he did a really good job with this script in a way that I think has been underappreciated in a lot of reviews, because the perspective part of it is the flashy part of the movie. It's the one that's easy to talk about, but it only works if there's a strong story supporting it. I mean, we've all seen a lot of terrible horror movies. How many times have we seen a film where there's a character who believes that there's some kind of supernatural thing going on and no one believes them? It's tropey at this point, but Koepp always has a slightly different angle in those scenes that do make him feel different. And it works especially well because the characters that he's written are really strong. They all have things that they're hiding, they have secrets, and then that feeds into the POV aspect of the film as well, because it feels like we're not supposed to be seeing these things. And he just does such a good job of slowly giving you more and more information where you're starting to piece things together. And I think it means that whenever you re-watch this film with the full context of everything, it'll feel really different then as well. It's not a script that reinvents the wheel or anything, but I do think it's one of those ones that would have been deceptively difficult to do, and it's the thing that elevates this movie from just being a POV gimmick. It's also just really cool that David Koepp would write a little small movie like this. Usually these movies are made this way because that's the only way they could afford to make them. They're a product of their own limitations. Because I feel like David Koepp and Steven Soderbergh, of all people, could have gotten more money to make this film if they wanted to, but it's a weird situation where I don't think a bigger budget would have actually improved the film in any way. Its intentionally limited resources are what makes the movie work, and if you were to give it like $100 million budget, it wouldn't feel natural or organic anymore. Because part of the whole setup of the movie is that the ghost can go anywhere. You'll get a 360-degree view of the room, you'll see it from floor to ceiling. So there's nowhere for them to hide lights or anything, they're just shooting with the natural lights they have in the environment. Again, they're probably fancy film lights tucked in that are more powerful than the average home, but it makes it feel like real, like a real house. It doesn't look lit in any way. And again, it's that thing that's always repeated where good cinematography isn't just a pretty image, it's one that helps tell the story. And this limited budget and these limited lights help tell the story. Now, unfortunately, the marketing did sell this as a straight horror movie, and I think that's doing it a little bit of a disservice because it is a bit more of a drama with spooky elements rather than a straight horror movie. I don't think anyone's going to come away from this scared. So I can understand people getting frustrated if they went into this film expecting to be scared and frightened and not getting that. But at the same time, I think the story they've told in this film works perfectly, and I think if they tried to make it scarier on purpose, it wouldn't work. It would undermine what they're doing. The movie works because it has a really solid premise and it just commits to it for the entire runtime. I thought this movie was absolutely fantastic. It's been a really interesting time for movies that show different POVs. We just had Nickel Boys, which was all shot from the first person. I just did a video about the movie Here, which was all shot in a fixed perspective. And I'm just really enjoying all the different ways filmmakers are experimenting with the form. If you've seen The Presence, let me know what you thought in the comments. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything coming up on the channel, make sure to subscribe.